Back in studio, many thanks indeed for joining us. Lensa Odingo is my colleague on the sign language interpretation. My name is Ben Troy, and we are looking at the state of the nation. Well, the dust has settled on the AU chairmanship, which Kenya, well, we could say Kenya performed quite well, coming in second after Djibouti. And Kenya's candidate, Raila Odinga, is now back in the country, was welcomed yesterday in Mombasa by President William Ruto at State House, Mombasa. And among what he said is that, or what Kenyans saw is that these two guys are willing to keep on working together. But Baba also added that he is consulting widely and he will be making a statement in regards to that. That's not all. There is an ODM meeting today where, of course, there has been a lot to talk about when you talk about ODM in government. A section of ODM has not been feeling very well welcomed in the broad-based government, and Baba will be stepping in to maybe quell or even to try and bring his troops together as we wait for that announcement that he mentioned. On the political scene, a lot has been happening. We've had a lot in regards to Chief Justice Martha Koome and also the Supreme Court, Apex Court judges as the Supreme Court. And if you remember, a week ago, the High Court did issue orders to stopping the petition, actually the 3 petitions. There are other petitions, but 3 petitions were stopped at the High Court in regards to the removal of the CJ and other judges of the Apex Court. That's just part of what we will be looking at, and I will be honored to have 3 gentlemen this morning. Of course, my first guest has already arrived in studio. His name is Gilbert Kiprono. Gilbert Kiprono is an economist and also a leadership and governance expert. Gilbert, many thanks indeed for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben.
Well. Of course, I'm also expecting a Gibson Gisore, and also we're also expecting the Honorable Geoffrey Kiringa Ruko, who is the Mbere North MP. And just to try and make this a balanced panel, it's good to mention that indeed I had also extended an invitation to because the MP comes from the Kenya Kwanza coalition. I had also extended an invitation to Azimio, but he was caught up last night and he will not be able to attend this interview. But away from that, let's keep going. Gilbert, maybe to the data, as I noted, that the dust has settled, but now yes, Baba is back in the country.
Yes.
And if you look at maybe the aftermath, some Kenyans were excited that Baba lost. Mm-hmm. Some Kenyans were disgruntled that Baba lost. But all that said, Baba is now back.
Yes.
And Kenyans are waiting to see, and also waiting for that. For that announcement. He said he is consulting widely. I would like you to, I know a lot has been conversed in regards to the AU chairmanship, but I would like you to dust the dust in regards to that and the next step that Baba takes before we even go to the PGM that we expect today.
Okay, thank you, Ben. And I think last time we had discussions and trying to just look at the probability of Baba winning, mm-hmm, and also looking at many aspects that actually played a role in actually in a leader or this AUC chair, mm-hmm, and I think as I mentioned last time, of course it was not a given mm-hmm, scenario where I would say that Baba would carry the day, mm-hmm, but of course there are many things that were coming into play as discussed, mm-hmm, and I think as I mentioned before, mm-hmm, the issue of Baba going and trying to take over and going for that vote to be voted for AUC chair was very, very important, because it was putting Kenya in a very, very good platform in terms of visibility, and also looking at the weight that you have as a country, mm, when it comes to such discussions at AU level. Mm. However, things didn't turn out the way we expected. Mm. And I think we look at what the president mentioned. They said that, looking at the experience, and, Africa has lost, because the experience that Baba has, and in terms of not only age, but of course, looking at what he has done, looking at the transformations, looking at, at the kind of democracy that he has been able to drive in this country. And most importantly, the role that Baba has played in the political Kenya's political space, but also looking at what he has been able to do at AU level being the high representative on infrastructure. And as mentioned before, it was not that given. And there were, choices have consequences. He made a choice to vie. He made a choice to present himself to be voted for. But of course, as it were, things happened. And we were very disappointed. Of course, many Kenyans were disappointed. Others were very happy. And those who were happy were looking at the political realignments that would come thereafter. The weight that the president actually threw to support Baba was expected because he is the president of the Republic of Kenya. Now, a candidate coming from East African region, and most importantly coming from Kenya, it would be more obvious to have president supporting him. But that as it may, we looked at the situation now where he is coming back. The implication that that is coming in now in terms of the political scenario and realignment is now being played. It's actually right now very active. We thought that when, and of course other people thought that if it was a scheme that Ruto had to have Baba go outside so that they can be able to, so that Baba could create a very good ground for him in terms of the competition in 2027, and others viewed as just trying to also give Baba a good, as he retires, he would retire honorably. However, as you look at the way realignments are happening, of course, Baba has to appreciate, and he has mentioned that it was not Ruto that actually fronted him. It is himself who actually proposed and fronted himself for that, AUC chair vote, and Ruto came in now to support, which was more expected. But then,
it was more expected because as a country, that was our candidate.
Oh yes, yes, that was our candidate. Yeah. And then looking at it this way, that you have a Kenya Kwanza, leader, the president, supporting Azimio president. These realignments are obvious, and you look at it this way, that when the president restructured the government, he was able to bring on board the members of Azimio, and of course the leaders. We had the chair, of course the vice chair coming in, and 5 cabinet secretaries coming in to support Ruto, and under the broad-based government that Ruto mentioned. Now it's now post-broad-based. Right now we are looking at how then, and President is looking at, he wants to ensure that he performs at all levels. He also wants to ensure that he has peace and there is tranquility that will prevail in this country. What we need to think and what we need to look at it as Kenyans is that if there is a possibility of having leaders working together collaboratively for the benefit of this country, then that is of course something that we will be very happy as Kenyans. Others are thinking that now these realignments that are coming in at the moment is trying to quench and try to, there are now regionalization, and of course you've seen the issues of ethnic balkanization that is happening. And the president is a symbol of national unity. He has welcomed other parties. He has been able to extend olive branch to the ODM and Azimio, and Raila is very happy, and especially with the support that he got. Now, what will happen thereafter is what we are waiting for. We've seen a lot of, the other team, the other faction that was very happy, especially from the, the other region, and you saw those who were celebrating without mentioning regions. But you see the kind of instability that is now coming in terms of the political realignments. People are now starting to think and to look at it this way, that whereas Baba didn't win, he's now coming in and is likely, and of course it's obvious that it's likely going to have a very good, formidable alliance with Kenya Kwanza.
And before we do that,
yes,
because I know exactly from what the two gentlemen spoke about yesterday, something is in the offing.
Yes.
But away from that, we fronted the Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga as a country.
As a country.
Should we as Kenyans also demand accountability when it comes to the money spent? I'm asking this because he did mention that yesterday, and of course we have a member of parliament who was whisked away last week in regards to the same. As Kenyans, we fronted these candidates. We didn't win.
Yes.
we want maybe there's an alliance in the offing, but as a country and as Kenya, should we be demanding an audit of how much we spend?
You know, it's like trying to audit the campaigns that happen, and of course...
but in campaigns, we are not supposed to use public money. Of
course, you're not using public resources. Yes. But of course, there is the issue of the fund, the political parties fund that they will draw actually to be able to use it for that purpose. However, it is very critical to also look at it this way, that we couldn't, and Ruto wanted at all costs to have Raila win. And you cannot claim to have a candidate as a country and fail to support that candidate. Look at the travels that Raila, he traversed most of the African countries. The deployment of a lot of resources and especially funds through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You saw Mudavadi and His Excellency Honorable Mudavadi going around as a Minister for Foreign Affairs, trying as much as possible to lobby and to go talk to other countries to vote for him. It required resources. It's more of speculation. I have seen a mention of that 13 billion, that has been spent. But who knows? Who knows? It could even be more. It could even be more than 13 billion.
But the Baba yesterday said that 13 billion is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
And again, just like you started, him being a statesman and also a face that's recognized around Africa.
Yes.
He did mention that mostly, he would be hosted by the countries themselves, not spend our coins. But at the end of the day, we didn't hear how much maybe we were able to spend as a country.
I wouldn't speculate on the amount. I've looked at some papers, written that, he spent 13 billion. It could be 2 billion, 1 billion, 3 billion.
Yes.
Away from it was a country's investment. The investment that country was making was to ensure that we have Raila win. However, we always, when you do business, we always have profit and loss. And of course, you expected, of course, it was an election. So you expected either a win or lose. So the investment that was made, and I want to also believe that the government didn't, misuse the resources as it were. They were used to mobilize, but not that it was misused to the extent of, having people suffering outside there and we have money being misused. I think accountability should, and I think if it is to go by what the president has been mentioning, in terms of accountability, in terms of utilizing and using resources as it were, I truly believe that we couldn't actually have spent 13 billion shillings. And if we were to do so, then, and of course we already have the resource. You want to tell me right now that if we have a discussion on that, we are going to get that money back? We will not get that money back. Of course, we will demand accountability. There was a question of having members of parliament going and giving that moral support to Baba in Addis. And personally, I wasn't so much enthused with that because they were not going to play any role at all. So I don't want to imagine and to have an imagination that public resources were used to take the members of parliament to Addis. Because if that was done, then I would actually personally even demand to know why, what was the basis for taking around 40 or 45 members of parliament. Actually, there was a troop of around 50. We're looking at the other candidates, they came in with around 2, 3 people. And you know what counted for them is they had been able to do the assignment before. They had been able to lobby enough to ensure that their candidate win. So I think we really need to look at the priorities, and sometimes we are overexcited. I think we were caught with a lot of excitements with the fact that we had Baba among the top tier candidates that we were expecting to win, and even Africans were thinking he was also a threat. In the first round he came in as number 1. But of course it was a strategy. Yes, first and second. So it was more tactical, and what the other parties did is to try as much as possible to lobby and ensure that they win. So looking at it this way, I think we really need to focus more, even as a country, to utilize and optimally use the resources that we have, so that it's taxpayers' money. It's taxpayers' money. If Raila had won, of course, it would have put Kenya on the map. It would have actually profiled our country as a country that has produced the AUC chair. In terms of course, somebody could say it could actually influence what could happen in terms of the trade, in terms of what happens across Africa and all that, and the position of Africa as a continent. Could it have a positive impact in our country? Of course it could, but of course now we are talking, it's now what under the bridge.
Yep. And the good
thing,
and since it's what under the bridge, now let's look at Baba. Today is supposed to be meeting his troops. And while Baba was away, part of his troop were not comfortable with the broad-based arrangement. I'm talking about even his Secretary General, who has talked not once or twice in regards to that. And Baba is supposed to be having a meeting today. As we, as Kenyans and as ODM, wait for the next move, what exactly should be Baba looking for right now? Because, of course, he has to marshal his troops back.
I don't want to speak for ODM, neither do I want to speak for Kenya Kwanza. But it's a political rule, it's a general rule that in politics you must be able to toe the line. And in this case, in the event that Baba will make you know, a declaration and of course comments and makes a move towards certain direction, then it behoves now the troops, as it were, to follow the words of Baba. The way you've seen people rambling around and saying that, you know, we are very uncomfortable with this arrangement. It is only the two leaders that have the capacity. You're talking about a leader who has been able to, of course, marshal for over 7 million votes. You are talking of a leader who has over 100 and something MPs, members of parliament. You are talking of somebody who is able to convince, and the convincing power. I don't know whether there is anybody we can compare. You know, when you look at what Raila does when it comes to politics and marshalling the troops and going out there campaigning. I don't know whether there is anybody we can compare. He's somebody who can be able to pull crowds. He's somebody who can be able to, so charismatic to the extent that you've seen people saying that, and especially ODM stoics, saying that if Baba said this direction, we will take this direction. Now, as to whether those who are rambling from within ODM are going to be impacted, I want to believe that Baba is trying to put his house in order, trying to talk to his colleagues, tell them that this is where we are. We needed, and we were vying even before. He was vying for presidential, seat, so that he could be able to transform this country. Now, he didn't get there. We already have an arrangement where a person of a caliber of His Excellency, Honorable William Ruto, has invited them to the table to try as much as possible to tap on their views, to tap on their wisdom, and also give in their expertise and professionals to serve within the government. So in that arrangement, for somebody who is reasonable, you will look at it this way, that if you are adding value in government, you have the opportunity now to ensure that the policies that you thought through, you've tabled them, and I know President will be amenable to taking in one or two ideas on how best he can be able to run government. Of course, you saw Gen Zs, and the President went down to the extent of even attending a meeting, Gen Z's meeting in X-Space. And you also saw the, bringing in, as I mentioned, every other people from political divide. So I want to believe that Baba is in control and is able to try to marshal his troops. Of course, you may not miss those errand ones who will speak out. And I want to also laud the fact that we have democracy and we have right of speech and expression. So whoever expresses themselves in a manner that is likely to, divide the party, as it were. I'm not a member of ODM, of course, and I don't want to speak for them. But I want to believe that the party leader will try as much as possible to convince them, and those who will not be happy with the decision will of course be allowed to go. The impact is so catastrophic to the effect that if a person is just claiming to be a member of a party and is not walking the talk of the party, they will be affected in one way and in a very big way, of course, with and including losing elections. In this country, and when we have a person of the caliber of we haven't reached a point where, as electorates, we sit down and look at the policies and look at the agenda that somebody brings on board. We look at who then is fronting this person. And I think when we reach that maturity, of course, we have the freedom of expression and everything, but as and when we reach that maturity is when we as Kenyans will be able to appreciate the fact that I need to elect somebody based on policies, I need to elect somebody not based on, the party leader's comments or based on, because a party leader has very influential.
Yeah, and Gilbert, you've mentioned the democracy that we are enjoying. Our Kenyan democracy, I would say, is quite young. But where does it leave it when after every election we have the minority, because now we don't have the opposition in the constitution, we have the minority going to bed with the government. And even before the new constitution, we saw handshakes. We had with President Moi, the Honorable Prime Minister had another one with Kibaki, he had one with Uhuru, we saw one with... Where does this leave democracy? And more specific, where does it leave us as Kenyans?
In politics, it's all about interests. So you started that way. It's all about interests. Now, one very unfortunate situation is that the interests of politicians, as long as you've been able to take care of their interests, the interests of Kenyans now might be in jeopardy. And
but I think the interests of Kenyans should not be taking. We should not be taking the back seat, and that is what we are seeing.
And of course, what do you expect when you have an opposition going to bed with the government? Of course, you will find other people trying to rise and start to take up the opposition role. But it's a very unfortunate situation because truly we expect that once you have elected a government, they are able to take the country forward. But you're looking at it this way. This is a country also which we've had a lot of violence. It's a country where we've experienced a lot of post-election violence. It's a country where we have experienced a lot of mandamanos and a lot of destruction of property. Somebody said the end justifies the means. And if the president is trying as much as possible to bring sanity, to bring in peace, to allow him work, because I think the idea of the politicians up, especially the leaders of the government leaders. You saw the other one, during President Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure, he had a handshake. And then we also came to, the broad-based agenda. The idea is to try as much as possible to bring the country together. But of course, there are things that we will suffer. The agitation that normally happens, and through the opposition, when it comes to the policies that we think they are not pro-people, policies that will tie down the country, policies that would, of course, are perceived by Kenyans that they are pushing them to the corner, that they are pulling them in terms of the little that they have. When you talk about taxation and all that, so then we as Kenyans now will feel. I think we have been left out. But the assurance we want to get is that if this arrangement is going to take the country forward in terms of development, so that we don't subdivide a country, so that we don't look at we don't have a country where you only have developments happening in Rift Valley and not coastal region, or have the developments happening in in the western region without looking at Nyanza. We have some parts of this country that haven't been able to enjoy the fruits of course, and of course, and the taxation that they pay, including the freedom that they have as Kenyans. So I think if that arrangement is not going to be abused to the extent that the agitation that the opposition should actually be able to play is deterred, then I know Kenyans will suffer. Kenyans will suffer.
Interesting. Gilbert, I'm looking after the 2022 election, because of the skirmishes and everything, we decided to do the NADCO, the National Dialogue Committee, and they came up with a report, and the Gen Z then happened, and everything was set aside. We came up with a broad-based government. But since Baba lost the AU seat, we have seen some of the lieutenants from the president's backyard talking about reintroducing, or lack of a better word, resurrecting the NADCO report and the creation of a PM, or the Prime Minister slot. Should we be relooking, not only the PM sport, should
Yes.
we be relooking at the NADCO report as a country? We are talking about bringing the country together. We're talking about a broad-based government, but we have seen that maybe it could be a little bit broader, because if you talk about a prime minister slot, that will have to go to Kenyans for a referendum.
Of course, it's of course expected that, as I told you, politics is about interests. And when you have interests taken care of, then you are happy as a politician. I don't think it will be quite, it will be inconsequential to still look at the NADCO. However, the politicians will still have their way. They will try as much as possible to bring that in, so that they take care of the interests of Baba. And I want to believe that all those discussions will come into play. No one will keep anything under the table. Right now, if there is a way where you can be able to legitimize and bring to try as much as possible to bring in these very key player, political player, on board, to sort out and be able, of course, not only to sort out their interests, but of course to try as much as possible to allow and enable the president to run the country. Of course, that is what we expect. Yes. That is what we expect, because it's all about politics.
So you do believe that maybe there are some of the things that we can be able to pick out from the NADCO report, because it was more or less the national dialogue.
But the question is, are we picking out these issues because of Baba lost AU? That is something that we need to look at.
Why I'm saying this is because we have seen some of the things that have been mooted by leaders later on becoming exactly what they were talking about. Of course,
you will see. The way I told you, politics, the way it's played, and of course, politicians already here. You have to tell us more. The way it is that you not only look at the interest of the people as it were, but you also look at your interest. Have I been able to take care of my interest? If doing that will take care of somebody's interest, then and not going to look at the interest of Kenyans, then we will be lost.
Very true. And that is Gilbert Kiprono. Today also have another Gibson Gisore, who is a constitutional lawyer and an advocate of the High Court. Just next to him, we have Honorable Geoffrey Kiringaruko, who is the Honorable MP for Mbeere North. The three Gs we'll be talking about more in regards to the state of the nation, but my colleague have seen. And there's a conversation that we were having here in regards to that, the broad-based government. Where does it leave Kenyans or even the minority? Because we do not have the opposition. If at all, will we continue with every time that we have the runners-up forms government with the president? From where you sit on the broad-based government?
Raila Odinga has learned how not to be a bitter ruler. He has learned you can rush elections, whether it is a general election here in Kenya, and still form coalition, be in government, and do what you want them to do to the people. And I think this is the same lesson he has taken to the continent. He has lost at the continent level. He is back in the nation. I heard him saying that he would have disputed the chairmanship, because you need 2/3, which the current chairman did not get, but he chose not to go that route, because I think he has learned how to rule in grace. And this is something which our friend Rigathi Gachagua has refused to learn completely. He's still very bitter, extremely bitter, and that bitterness might take him further to the bush. And before he realizes he's in darkness in the bush.
Why exactly are you saying that he is bitter? To support your answer, the former deputy president.
The kind of the kind of his talk we witnessed on Sunday in Meru, and even I think last night, is someone who is extremely bitter, someone who is lost in his own thinking, someone who has completely failed to appreciate that Kenya is bigger than Mount Kenya region, than his own village.
And because he cannot respond.
Someone who has completely refused to accept as a constitution which runs this nation. And some of the articles of Constitution, like Article 10 of our Constitution, is not just mere want. They are serious statements or articles of Constitution which every state officer must be seen to abide by those provisions of the Constitution. So even if you don't believe in some of those provisions, behave in a manner like it suggests that you are believing in them. Gachagua has completely refused.
But because he's not here, maybe
it
for
was
his
not
right
about
of
Gachagua.
reply.
It was
Yes.
about, the question was about
Yes.
Raila Odinga.
Yes, yes.
So I think Raila Odinga, as I've said, he has learned over the years how to ruse in grace, how not to be bitter in a wrath, in curse, and to carry that wrath as an advantage and see what he can make out of it. Turning lemon into lemonade. He's an expert in doing that. And we wish him well. I think they are going to run a government together with President William Ruto. He may not be in any position, in any official position, but his men already are holding key position in government. Probably we are going to see more holding a key position in government, not only in government but also in key parliamentary committees. Today afternoon or tomorrow, we will be seeing those names being tabled in Parliament, and I'm sure you'll see the face of Raila Odinga in all these parliamentary committees as well as key ministries. Already he has Minister of Finance, Minister of Cooperative and Micro Enterprises. He has a Minister of Energy. Also, he has Minister of East Africa Cooperation and Minister of Mining. Those are 5 ministries. He must be a very powerful individual. Of course, he's one of those powerful politicians we have in the Republic of Kenya. He's the only man who can call for a meeting at Uhuru Park this week, and it will be full, and nobody will be paid a coin to be there. Even the public addresses, Raila Odinga will not know where they come from.
It's a good thing that you've mentioned that he's a very astute politician as well. And one thing that has made him to be loved by Kenyans is that he's always defending Kenyans. But when it comes to these arrangements, Mheshimiwa, where do we leave Kenyans? And he's supposed to be in the opposition, or allow me not to use the word opposition because it's not in the Constitution. He's supposed to be on the minority side, where he's supposed to be checking government. Every time that he has made, what, like 5 handshakes now? And where does that leave Kenyans? Who is left to do the checking, the balances?
Raila Odinga still checks government even when he's in government. And the thing is, the good thing, there is nothing which the current administration is hiding as far as running of government is concerned. Kenyans think probably there's something which those in government are not telling them. But the truth of the matter is the situation, the way it is exactly what those in position of power tell Kenyans. That's why William Ruto was magnanimous enough to say, take the treasury. When we say we don't have money to run this government, it's the fact that we need to raise more revenue, we need to borrow, we need to be innovative enough and find a way of raising resources which can run the affairs of the country. And because Kenyans think I am lying to them, bring your man, let me be in charge of treasury, let's see whether fact will change. And from the time Bandi became the Minister for Treasury, factors have remained the same. We are now talking about Finance Bill 2025, which is likely to continue at the same pace of taxation, or probably expand the tax base, be more innovative, but ensure you don't injure the common man in the process of expanding the tax base. But the fact is, running this government, Kenyan government is becoming expensive. Kenyans have to appreciate that fact. We bestowed ourselves a very expensive constitution, which has many structures of governance, which didn't have during Kibaki's time. When Uhuru Kenyatta came in, he went on a borrowing spree. We have huge debt, international debt, which we have to pay, whether we like it or not. If we don't pay, our economy will just collapse because of the rating of the Kenyan economy. If we don't pay, the capital flight, which will move out of this country, will be immense. Nairobi Stock Exchange will collapse. So we have international and local obligations which must be met. They cannot be met by ways of raising revenue. Government must find ways of raising revenue. One of the ways is becoming very efficient in terms of tax collection, which KRA has to be more efficient and ensure that the taxpayers are not punished in the process of KRA becoming more efficient. We need to put a lot of effort in that direction. Also, we have to reduce our wastage. Felix Kosgei, I've said it in several other places.
All right.
Felix Kosgei has to stimulate the public service.
Yeah. From what you've talked about, we'll be talking about the 4 trillion. It has been mooted that the budget will be about 4 trillion shillings. Where are we going to get that money? An audit of maybe what we have spent already, and especially when it comes to Baba campaign, because that might come into Parliament. And also we'll be looking at the national debt, exactly where we are. Because I will quote the president after the Gen Z protest. He said, in 3 months, in the next 90 days, we'll have an audit of the national debt. We know what we owe, what we should be paying, and that has not happened yet. But away from that, karibu sana Bwana Gisore, I'm looking at what Baba yesterday said, that he is be looking at a partnership with two, and we should wait for what he's going to be telling us. But we have seen from these broad-based arrangements, some Kenyans, part of Kenyans feel left out. I'm talking about this because from when they engage in that broad-based government, some of the lieutenants from the president's side, and they have now debunked to the former deputy president's side, and part of opposition, and more specifically ODM. I'm talking about the likes of Secretary General Edwin Sifuna and Nairobi Senator. It has left a bitter taste in some Kenyans' mouths, including politicians. Are we looking at another more stronger handshake with what was discussed yesterday?
Thank you, Troy, for inviting me. I would look at this from two perspectives. Politics is about interests, and sometimes interests of political interests keep changing. As it is now that the handshake between Raila Odinga and Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the president, we have seen an area of ODM people come into government, and they have become very vocal in defending the government more than my good friend here, Ruku, has been. I think he's a battle-hardened soldier who has remained constant in defending government. But I think the ODM brigade has become more fierce in defending government than even some of the people in Kenya Kwanza coalition. So that is about interest. It's not really about Mwananchi. The question you have asked is a very important one. Where do we leave Mwananchi? The thing about politics is you first secure your interests. And I think the ODM brigade is busy securing their interests. Now, it's quite interesting on the other side, on my second argument, is the development which we are likely to see, which Mheshimiwa can be able to tell us, the aspect of the court ruling that it's the Azimio side which is the majority, which is a fact which was well known by everyone. We are likely to see a realignment. Part of what I expect from what Raila was, the meeting with Raila and the president at the coast, was most probably to see a rearrangement of parliament given the ruling, because the ruling has got to be complied with. The judgment of the court has got to be complied with. Much as the leadership at the National Assembly seems to be putting it aside, that is not something we need to, unless they go and appeal, which they haven't, this from my recollection, we need to see that enforced, and that will be a key argument. You see, it was given in the run-up to the AU election, so we could not expect very critical, robust discussion around it. But I think between the two principles, that's something they'll need to sit down and be able to So in the event this happens, we are going to have Azimio people take over leadership of the National Assembly and the Senate. That will be very interesting because there will be people from the minority who are presumed to be minority now have become majority. And then government will go on the minority side. So a sitting government being on the minority side will be a very interesting mix of leadership for this particular country, and we'll be waiting to see how that happens, if it happens. Because they might also do another set of agreement and then have a way of sliding that away.
And I think that is exactly what they are doing,
which is not good, because you are going, you're not now.
Is it right?
It's not right. That's going against
Because
the
the court has
constitution
already
provisions, especially the respect of the rule of law. You see, we need to entrench constitutionalism and respect of the rule of law for us to be a sane country, for us to be a country which has direction. But if political will seems to outweigh constitutionalism, then we are going to drive ourselves into a major problem. And that is what worries me as an advocate. So if we are not very careful and be able to look at these things, because every time there is a conflict between the law and politics, we hear that politics have found a political solution. And then the constitution or the rule of law is left to sort itself. And that is not a proper way of because the whole aspect of even the speaker declaring the minority side to be the majority is what has led us to where we are. There is the other aspect of the NGCDF, which has always consistently been declared to be in constitution, but Parliament have been always finding a way of changing this or mutating this into something else. We will also want to see how that goes. The NADCO report tried to address that. We expect that once now Parliament sittings start, some of those things will have to be ventilated, and then we find the best way forward on this, some of these issues, so that we can be able to be on the right track towards development. So those are some of the things I expect to be looked at keenly. The aspect of whether Raila becomes prime minister or not, that we leave it to him. I saw the president refer to him as Mr. Prime Minister. I don't know whether he's trying to affirm that that has already come to pass.
Maybe you're reading too much.
Or we are reading too much, but or it could just be a courtesy greetings which he was giving, but that we'll be able to know, because Raila promised that he will give his political direction in the short while to come, so we'll wait and see.
And maybe we can give Mheshimiwa a chance to respond to that. Why is it that matters from the court are being sorted out legislatively as opposed to judiciary? I
want to demystify what my brother said here. Anybody who read the ruling of the court on the question whether Azimio is the majority or minority, the court did not declare Azimio as a majority party, and did not also declare Kenya Kwanza as minority party.
But the numbers from the beginning don't lie.
Let me put it. So it is very important for anybody who has read the ruling. The court did not declare the Azimio party as the majority or even as the minority. There was no question of which is the majority and which is the minority. The court only quashed the ruling of the Speaker on 6th October 2022 on the majority and minority parties in the National Assembly. It is important to note that the question as to which party is the minority or majority is one which can only be determined by the Speaker of the National Assembly.
I think
it is not the business of the court to determine. If you read Article 108,
you read the ruling. Is he on the right track? Because we wouldn't want to.
I can assure you, my brother here
is just defending his coalition.
You can be sure. You can be sure.
It
my brother did not read the ruling. I have the ruling here.
So who exactly is the majority? From what the court described?
Let me put you through the process. If you read Article 108 of our Constitution, Constitution defines which party is majority and which party is minority. At the Constitution of Kenya, the question of which party is majority and minority is not static. It's not static. I want you to underline that. But it's one which evolves depending on the party formations in the House. And there is pre-election coalitions and post-election coalitions. In determining the question at any given time, one would require to give regard to post-elections coalition agreement and any vacancy arising from election petitions, resignation, or death of a member.
Wakili,
we have court petitions which have gone through. We have death in Parliament
here. But just a minute, Mheshimiwa. Why is it that I remember after President William Ruto was elected, there are some people who raised concern that he was not validly elected, and they went to court, and we followed the court ruling. Why is it now Parliament cannot accept the court ruling in that, or even appeal that in court? They're doing their own things.
National Assembly accepted the ruling that Speaker erred in making his judgment, and the Speaker retreated to make another judgment. And this ruling or this determination, you only require to ask the registrar of political parties, please give me the coalition agreement.
I think the
pre and post coalition agreement.
The court used that.
Pre and coalition agreement.
Reading the judgment partially to serve his side, and is interpreting it to suit his side. What the court says.
Allow me to make my point. If you go one by one,
is not actually saying.
If you account for the members, you'll be able to see who are the majority. And the Speaker rules.
Yes.
That's a thing which we settled.
Mheshimiwa, allow
people to tell us
right to reply.
The position which the court declared that the current the current Labour minister's party did not officially leave Azimio, because there's no document which was produced to prove that they were.
Yeah,
so
to
it
the
means
Register of Political Parties.
legally they are presumed to be Azimio people. The party about the Speaker of the Senate also did not officially leave. So this, which numbers are we talking about? We are talking about post. He's referring to post where we are referring to the pre-election arrangement. So that is where I think he doesn't want to come clear on that. And that is what they are clinging on to. There is the arrangement about post, but the pre is what we are talking about, because there is no proof that these people left. And once there is no proof legally, you cannot prove legally in any court of law that you left. For example, you claim to have, tomorrow I meet you in the street, you say you have left KBC. But then when I come to KBC, they say that guy has not handed in any resignation. So we assume he's enjoying his own frolic. So
supposing he resigns.
So supposed to he resigns, but according to his mind, he's telling people he has resigned. So that is what we are talking about. And the court was looking at that keenly. Where are these resignation letters? Where did they deposit this? Even if we go to the office of the Registrar of Political, I'm sure we cannot find that document. Because, or unless if it exists, it was never produced before the court. And the court deals with what is on the table. What was produced on the table was nothing to show that these people left. So the court ruled that Azimio coalition is leading legally according to what they was produced. So unless they appeal and produce this document,
can I read the ruling?
Then we can be able to have this particular challenge.
Can I read paragraph 5 or 8 of the judgment?
Because
unless the whole ruling is read here, is when we can be able, because
and actually we don't have the time for that.
Paragraphs
but since
which you cannot be able to substantiate.
But since the Speaker has already done something else, I would want us to maybe drift a bit from that because of the interest of time. Do you believe, Mheshimiwa, that we should implement the NADCO report? I've seen some of the NADCO report has been mentioned by some UDA MPs and also has been mooted by some of the ODM lieutenants.
Kenya is not a static nation. Kenya is a moving concern, is an ongoing concern. It's a country which keep on evolving. Remember, we were in single party. We went to multi-party. We are still evolving as a nation. NADCO report fits very well as far as taking our nation forward. I think there are quite a number of element within the NADCO report which need to be implemented as soon as possible. And because we are a community which is unique. We are not United States of America. We are not South Africa. We are not any other nation. We are Kenya. We have our own unique characteristics which need to be embedded in our structures of governance so that we can move together as a nation. And I think NADCO report has some of those recommendations which need to be embedded within our governance structure. And from where I sit, we need to implement NADCO report.
Gilbert, apologies, I've not ignored you. It's just that at least these are some of the things that we had already canvassed before they came into studio. Do you believe that it's time to implement the NADCO report? And also kindly factor in the will of Kenyans as well.
And I mentioned before that most of these things are quite of rearrangements that are going to suit political interests. And I want to thank Wakili. You mentioned exactly what I said. That in politics, people look at their interest. Are their interests going to be taken care of? Now, the question is, if Baba would have gone to AU, would we have reopened the NADCO report? That is a big question. When I look at it from the angle of the realignments, then of course they will reopen it. But I think reopening that would ideally is trying to ensure that the interests of the other party is well taken care of. I think that is the main thing here. And that speaks to the question of maybe now Right Honorable Raila Odinga ingeniously wants to ensure that now that he is here and there is now an opportunity to still now reopen it. Is it going to be reopened, and how is it going to serve, of course, his interest and the interest of his party? And now that those other, party, members of Azimio are in government, what do Kenyans feel? I think what Kenyans would want to see is work done. My interest as a Kenyan, I want to see when I pay taxes, is it utilized optimally? Is it used? Is it safe? Are developments going on? If this NADCO report is going to be reopened and, and is going to transform our economy, then let it be reopened. I have no problem. But as long as the interests of Kenyans are not on the table, then Kenyans will be having problems.
Wakili, what would it take for the NADCO report? I'm asking this because this is something that we have seen, and of course over the weekend we saw members of parliament, and especially from the president lieutenants, talk about the NADCO. Case in point is Senator Cherargei. But Gibson has thrown a spanner in the works. Would it be opened if Baba had won the AU seat?
Yes, it's Gilbert who has thrown this spanner. Yes, so the NADCO report is good. There are things which are debatable, but most of it are recommendations of amendments or coming up with bills which are going to enable to ensure that there is good transparency, there is good governance. The thing about the NADCO report is that it's a self-serving report. It seems to be serving the political equation. That is what it's trying to sort, which in one way or another as Kenyans, we do agree that we have political challenges. And once those political challenges are sorted, then we can be able to find a way of moving forward as Kenya. So that after every election, we do not have a very contested or a spirited fight to ensure that there are two protagonists, which leaves the country to be divided. So once that report comes into play, I hope it will be able to alleviate some of the challenges we face or which were brought about by the Constitution. Largely, the Constitution, I think, did not anticipate creating a crisis as it is. But, as I would want to agree with Mheshimiwa that we are an evolving nation. We need to keep developing our democracy. We need to keep developing our governance. And since NADCO report was a negotiated document, the only thing which we will want to see is let the document be taken to Mwananchi, let Mwananchi understand it, let Mwananchi own it up. And that is, I think, where we always fail as Kenyans, because even the Constitution, much as people claim that Kenyans understand the Constitution, the civic education was not properly done. If we can be able to do that and then bring in the NADCO report and let every Kenyan be able to understand it, I will wish for a situation whereby even the constitution is translated to local languages. While we claiming to be Kenyans, then while the majority of Kenyans who cannot be able to read and write cannot be able to know what the constitution is talking about. So that even the vernacular stations can actually be able to translate the constitution to the people so that they know their rights, they know their obligations, they know what the constitution portends for them. So once we do this, in some other countries like Tanzania and Botswana, that is very effective because any government policy has got to be cascaded to the grassroots. That is what we feel. Now the constitution has remained, or any government policy has remained for the elites, for the elitists. Bentro, do you know how many people have degrees in this country or who have gone to school? They're not 5% of the population. So if we leave this for this small clique of people to translate it or to make decisions on behalf of the other, then we will have issues of disharmony. We'll always have issues of, we leave other people behind. That's why we are talking about affirmative action. We bring in the ladies' side on, and the young people onto the development tray. So it's important that we be able to move together as one. That is why even we need to have even the northern part of Kenya also opened up for economic development and such things. So that when I'm in Lodo, I'm seeing Abdulaziz Hashim is in Lodo. It's a beautiful place. We don't have to think that that is a far-off place. We know it's a place you can go and be able to do your business. So once we do that, then we can be able to, that is what I think should be the backdrop of the NADCO report, not just solving the political equation.
Let's hear from Mheshimiwa. Do you support the calls to resurrect the NADCO report? And if yes, on exactly what aspect should we be resurrecting it?
We are not resurrecting the NADCO report. The NADCO report, already there are a number of bills which, I think 9 bills. Nine bills on the floor of the House, which have been going through the legislative process. Legislative process takes some time, and it's not a coincidence that Raila Odinga has lost AU, and now we are resurrecting NADCO report. That is wrong, that is false, that is not true. The truth of the matter is almost a year ago, NADCO report bills, 9 of them were tabled by the leader of majority and the leader of minority on the floor of the National Assembly, and those bills have been going through the legislative process, and one of them is a mandatory public participation, which I'm not sure whether they have gone through the public participation yet. They have to be processed through the committees. They have to be processed through the legal directorate of the National Assembly. And remember, these bills are both Senate and the National Assembly. They have to go to the both houses. So it has been going on. Whether Raila Odinga won AU, still the 9 bills will be in the process of getting finalized within the legislative processes of the parliament. Whether Raila Odinga has lost as he has lost, it has not motivated anything as far as those bills are concerned.
Still on the legislative agenda, we are having some changes in regards to the House leadership. You've mentioned finance, you've mentioned trade, a number of committees. How is it expected to change the legislative agenda and also the political agenda? Because some of these key committees, the chairmanship has been handed from the ruling UDA to ODM.
I look forward to a situation where Finance Committee is going to be chaired by ODM or as me, a member of Parliament. To see what is that they can change as far as Finance Bill 2025 is concerned. We are in a very difficult time last year when we are processing Finance Bill 2024. And of course, as Mio and the entire ODM brigade was totally against, and they incited the entire nation against the Finance Bill. So I look forward to a situation where chairman of Finance Bill, of Finance Committee, is going to be member of ODM. I'll be a very happy register in such a situation, because we have a nation which we have been bestowed responsibility by the people of Kenya to steward and move, make it progress. One of ways of making it progress is knowing how we are going to finance our day-to-day running of a nation. We said the ideas we have as Kenya Kwanza in the year 2024. The entire brigade of ODM and Azimio, they were up in arms. Let's now give them a finance committee so that they can bring that document on the floor of the House, how this nation is going to be financed. How we are going to finance our security, how we are going to finance our education sector, how we are going to finance our health, how we are going to finance our roads, and any other sector which requires resources.
Gilbert.
So I'll be a very happy person when Finance Committee is chaired by ODM.
Let's speak
and I'm championing, let's give it to ODM.
It's good he's accepted.
Mheshimiwa could be doing this in good light, and on the other hand, Mheshimiwa could be looking at the 4 trillion finance bill that the clouds have started gathering, and based on what we saw in Finance Bill 2023-2024, Finance Bill 2024-2025, as a party, I wouldn't want that seat. But how is this going to change the political landscape and legislative agenda, the changing of the House leadership positions?
Of course, it goes without saying that as a leader and as the president would want to have to ensure that anything that goes to Parliament, of course, and it passes, of course, through the normal process, as it were. And the leadership within the Parliament is very critical. Whoever you choose as the chair of the committee actually determines the success of whatever bills they are going to push, that will promote government agenda. And now that there is that conversation of Azimio and Kenya Kwanza coming in together, pulling together, working together even in Parliament, I don't think there will be any change per se, but of course understanding the fact that the two leaders will now be speaking from the same script, of course things will move, as it were. The only difference is that it's now Azimio who is going to chair, but the difference in terms of how it will, of course the agenda will still be driven by the government, as it were. And the changes in leadership, if for example you are purporting to be the chair of a committee and you are against the government agenda, of course political leaders would want to ensure that the agenda is pushed to the end, and you are speaking and talking and also doing what is going to support the government agenda. In terms of I don't think the change of chairmanship will reduce the debt crisis that we are in as a country. I also don't think that changes in the leadership would, of course, affect the economy, as it were, if the deliberate effort of government is not going to ensure that resources are optimally used. Number one. Number two, that we have to be quite reasonable in terms of spending and in terms of ensuring that even the bills that we push are bills that are from Mwananchi, because Mwananchi would want to see a situation where, in as much as we want to raise taxes, is it reasonable enough? Are we using what is the frequency of the changes in bills? What is the frequency of the changes in the legislative frameworks? And is it something that is pro-Mwananchi? And I think from the Mwananchi perspective, I would want to see a situation where anything that goes to Parliament, whoever chairs, as long as the interest of Mwananchi is taken care of, I will be very happy. But I also think that the dream of president is to ensure that he ensures that his agenda is driven. And we want to see more action. I think where we are is we have more talks than actions. And I would want to challenge Mheshimiwa, as you push things through the Parliament, you should employ reasonable thinking so that everything that goes through Parliament, of course, has Mwananchi in mind, so that whatever we tell people, we are going to do it. Azimio have been fighting, and of course from the opposition side before, trying as much as possible to bring out issues that of course are thorny and touches on Mwananchi, especially the issue of taxation. I would want to see now that in the event the Azimio will produce the chair of the committees, are they going to now speak what they used to speak, or they are going to bring the ingenuity and ideas on how best they can be able to transform the economy, as it were? So those are some of the scenarios that I would wait to see happen. We've also had situations where we have members of parliament expressing themselves and, you know, denying and, of course, sometimes even saying no. And you've even seen situations where the freedom of speech and expression, where even a cabinet secretary would want to say that, I think the government position, as it were, is not what I think should be the position. So we will see that the intrigues and the mix that is going to come in, and we truly believe that for as long as it's for the interest of Kenyans, as we have no problem. But I would want to see accountability. Accountability in the sense that any resources that is going to be deployed, whatever, is used optimally.
Okay. And still on the same, because you're also an economist, we are looking at a 4 trillion shilling budget. What options that the government has, other than, and also steering clear of course, hurting Mwananchi, because the 3 trillion budget, we saw what happened, and we wouldn't want to go back there again.
What happens is that the debt, we have no problem with the debt. And from the economist perspective, it has to be, the debt GDP ratio has to be maintained at a certain level. Where we want to see is that when you borrow money, is it used? There are several ways of financing, the budget. One, of course, is through taxation. Another one is through, borrowing, locally, domestically, and also internationally, where you do foreign borrowing. And another one is through grants, where you have in other countries saying, we want to support you on this and this and this. And what normally happens is that when we have money flowing in, and the money that flows in terms of borrowing is not used, if we have corruption and misuse of resources, that is where the problem is. We are growing, and when a child grows, and when I grow big, of course, you have to put on a bigger cloth. So I wouldn't imagine that as a country, as an economy right now, you would want to shrink the economy, talk about a smaller budget, because it speaks to the needs, it speaks to the expenditure, it speaks to what is in it that you want to do as a country. So in terms of the size of the budget, we have no problem.
Financing is where
the issue is, and we are saying, if you go borrowing, borrow reasonably. Don't overborrow so that it becomes now a debt crisis. We get into a debt crisis. Now, in terms of the taxation, as an economist, I do not want to imagine that taxation is the only way we would want to go into to push Kenyans to corner. And I think the economists around and advisors of president, of course, are exploring options of either looking at it in terms of do we need to look at borrowing and see sustainable borrowing so that we don't overtax? Because I don't want to imagine that now this bill is financing this, the finance for 2025, or financing 2025 will require more taxes. I will take home less income. And when you have disposable income as a Kenyan, the smaller it is, the less you spend. And the less you spend, it means even you are going to even affect the economy, because the economy grows on spending.
Yeah. Gibson, because we are running out of time, I'm looking at what options does the government has to finance a bigger budget than what we had in last year, actually, 2024.
I think it's been very clear what this government has all along stood for. It's taxation and borrowing. I've not seen any out-of-the-box reasoning in terms of coming up with taxation, unless we see one now that the opposition, member of the opposition is the one in the treasury. They were really keen to see what kind of ingenious ways is going to come up to be able. But as it is, we have a problem. We have a problem, and we're in an economic crisis. We want to hope that as we grow, we should not be able to hurt Mwananchi. We should be able to look at mechanisms in which we can be able to accommodate Mwananchi and enable them to grow. I'm not a big proponent of over-taxation. Taxation is a legal thing, but over-taxation now hurts the economy, as the economist, as Gilbert has already highlighted. So it's imperative for government to actually look at scenarios. For example, the African Free Trade Area, it's loose-hanging fruits which you can be able to pick from. Let's trade more with our neighbors. Well, we're busy talking about fancy things instead of just encouraging that we can be able to trade more with Tanzania, we can be able to trade more with Southern Sudan. Well, why is the corridor to Lodwar still considered a volatile place? Why don't we have a tarmac linking us to Juba and then connecting us even to the Greater Sudan and even to the Central African Republic? So those are things which can be able, why don't we have a road to Somalia? Kismayu, where our soldiers are, so that we can also open up that corridor and the Lapset corridor. Why don't we have a tarmac road along the Lapset, which is already running? Because that's when you talk business. But when you are busy running across the country, talking politics on day in, day out, then that does not help Mwananchi. It's important that we also incentivize investors to come in as it were now. Investors are leaving, going to Tanzania. Actually, even the Tanzanian president herself has said, we've never seen a huge influx of investors, especially from our neighboring country. It means there's something we were doing right, which we are not doing anymore, making people to actually leave. Can we attract those people back? Can we be able to have mechanisms where we can be able to have job employment for our young people? Can we leave this business of telling people that, you know, you need to take a flight to Saudi to go work as a maid so that we bring money? That cannot be able to grow our economy. So if we can be able to concentrate on our own affairs, we can be able to sort this country. Kibaki did, and we actually saw exponential growth of this country, and even reduced on borrowing. The borrowing was basically for development, not to sustain, not to for recurrent expenditure. So if we can be able to apply the right frame of mind which Kibaki did, I'm sure Kenya is going to be a great country, and we're going to be happy to live in it.
Mheshimiwa, I'm looking at what the head of state said after the Gen Z protest, and said that we're going to have in the next 90 days an audit of all the public debt that we have. And I'm looking at the 4 trillion shillings budget and how to finance it. Some of the financing of a budget is through debt. And we have hit the what? The 12 trillion shilling? Actually, we hit the 10 trillion shilling ceiling.
We increased it to 12.
We increased it to 12, and we are almost about
the good works of Parliament.
14 or 15. And all this are done via Parliament, an act of Parliament. Yes. How are we going to finance that?
At the moment, the borrowing or the debt is anchored on the GDP, the size of the GDP. And it's a percentage 50 to 55% of the GDP. So if the Kenyan GDP grows, then the debts, the space for getting more debt also grows. So that's how it is oscillating. That's the law.
Okay.
But having said that, the 4.1 trillion budget of the Republic of Kenya, if we compare ourselves with other nations, you realize that we are an extremely poor nation. Because actually, it's about 30-something billion dollars. And you go to major economies in the world that cannot even run one ministry, and not even a critical ministry, can't run even a ministry of tourism in some economies. So we are very poor nation, and we need to really work extremely hard to grow our economy, to grow our country.
All right. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Maybe we can wrap up on points, kindly. 2
very important points. Finance bill. We will need to an economy which is predictable. This business of having finance bill every year, I think, is not the right way. We need to have probably finance bill or to change our taxation policies and procedures after 2.5 years. You know, within a duration of 5 years, we have only finance bill after only 2 finance bills, so that we can have a predictable economy. And investors are happy when they know how things are going to look like or how things are going to span within a period of certain time. But not every single 12 months, 10 months we are changing. No, so I would advocate for having finance bill only twice in a period of 5 years. Then the other thing is the spending.
Very briefly.
The spending in our public service. We really need to do something.
Down.
We really need to do something. From where I sit, we are not doing well. Public service of the Republic of Kenya is not efficient.
Thank you.
Public service of the Republic of Kenya,
yes.
A lot of people who are working there, senior people, after making business deals, doing business with the government, doing deals, and is upon the end of public service, Mr. Felix Koskei, you have a well job cut which you need to fulfill.
Thank you.
2.5 years are gone. please, within these other 2.5 years, let's see an efficient public service.
Thank you, thank you. That has been Honorable Geoffrey Ruko from Mbere North. There putting into perspective matter state of the nation. And just next to him, we have advocate and also a political analyst as well, and university Don, who is Gibson Yamato Gisore. And just next to him, we have Gilbert Kiprono, who is an economist and also a governance expert. Gentlemen, thank you so much indeed for joining us and also for your insight. Looking forward to this discussion. And I'm quite sure, Mheshimiwa, will be calling you next so that you tell us whether SHA is working in Mbere North. But that's a topic for another day. Thank you so much indeed for joining. My name is Bentroy Njue. Lenso Dingo was our sign language interpreter. Now we have Susan Thiku. I'm giving the baton to Swahili desk for Kurunzi Mashinani and Tambuni. Have a good one.